Eagle's Dare may look like a perfectly controlled wartime spectacle, but beneath its icy landscapes and polished action lies a chaotic reality most viewers never imagine. The production moved between brilliance and danger, shaped by unpredictable personalities and risky decisions. What seemed flawless on screen was often a storm behind the scenes, hiding revelations that completely change how this classic is remembered. Fact 1. A dangerous mix of talent and exhaustion. Richard Burton entered the production carrying unmatched talent and a level of exhaustion that shaped the atmosphere from the very first day. His heavy drinking phase was widely known within the industry, and although it rarely held him back during intense scenes, it created a constant sense of unpredictability around the set. Some mornings, he arrived late. On others, he appeared drained before filming even began. The crew often rearranged the schedule to match whatever version of Burton showed up that day. Despite recognizing the challenges, the studio tolerated the situation because Burton's reputation was simply too powerful to risk disrupting. His performances remained striking, yet behind the camera, the team quietly handled the consequences of his unstable routine. This mix of brilliance, fatigue, and volatility created an environment where tension became part of the workflow, shaping not only the pace of the film, but also the dynamic between cast and crew. Fact 2. Eastwood's quiet defiance. Clint Eastwood approached Where Eagles Dare with the same focused calm that defined his rising career. But behind that silence was a subtle form of resistance. His character had significantly fewer lines than Richard Burton's, and instead of demanding more dialogue, Eastwood embraced the minimalist approach and trimmed his lines even further during filming. Crew members recalled how he quietly crossed out entire sentences without discussion, reinforcing a performance built on actions rather than words. This created an underlying tension, especially when Burton's unpredictable behavior contrasted sharply with Eastwood's controlled style. The studio allowed it because Eastwood's growing popularity made confrontation risky, and the reduced dialogue ultimately enhanced the mysterious aura of his character. His silence became a deliberate artistic statement, one that shaped the tone of the film and added a unique edge to the partnership portrayed on screen, even when the atmosphere behind the scenes was far from harmonious. Fact 3. Deadly realism behind the stunts. The stunt sequences in Where Eagles Dare were built on a level of realism that bordered on dangerous, especially by today's standards. High-altitude scenes were performed with minimal protective gear, leaving stunt performers dependent on grip strength, balance, and sheer courage to stay safe. The cable car sequences, filmed at daunting heights, became the most notorious examples of this raw approach. Some crew veterans and longtime fans have shared unverified rumors suggesting that near accidents occurred during these demanding takes, moments when a single misstep could have led to catastrophe. Even without official documentation, technicians from the era often described the set as a place where adrenaline and risk collided daily. This combination of limited technology, bold physicality, and old-school filmmaking created unforgettable tension on screen. However, it also left behind stories that echo through fan circles and behind-the-scenes discussions, reminding everyone how real the danger once was. Fact 4. The script that changed at the last minute. The screenplay of Where Eagles Dare went through a whirlwind of revisions before cameras even rolled, creating a sense of organized chaos behind the scenes. Alistair MacLean delivered the initial draft, but many in the production felt his dialogue-heavy style lacked the action needed for a major war film. Industry accounts from the era suggest that the studio brought in additional writers whose identities were never officially credited to reshape entire sections of the script. These adjustments focused on tightening pacing, increasing tension, and expanding the film's signature action sequences. While MacLean's core story remained intact, several character motivations and set pieces were altered to fit the new direction. Some crew members later remarked that pages were still being adjusted during early shooting days, leaving actors unsure of what might change next. This fast-paced rewriting contributed to the film's energetic feel, but also created a creative storm few outsiders ever knew existed. Fact 5. The budget that spiraled out of control. Where Eagles Dare began with a confident budget, but the production quickly turned into a financial roller coaster that pushed the studio to its limits. Weather delays in the Alps repeatedly halted filming, forcing the crew to relocate equipment and rebuild schedules at high cost. Richard Burton's unpredictable condition added even more strain, requiring retakes that drained time and money. Industry accounts from the era mention growing frustration among producers as daily expenses climbed far beyond projections. Each setback forced MGM to approve additional funds, creating internal tension between the creative team and executives overseeing the budget. Some crew members later recalled receiving constant updates about cuts, only for plans to change hours later as emergencies arose. By the time filming wrapped, the cost had nearly doubled, transforming what was supposed to be a controlled production into a financial storm. Ironically, this runaway budget became part of the movie's legendary reputation. Fact 6. Burton's explosive on-set temper. Richard Burton's intensity didn't stay confined to the camera. His temper often erupted behind the scenes, creating moments that left the crew on edge. Long hours, physical exhaustion, and his heavy drinking phase formed a volatile mix that sometimes pushed him over the limit. Several people who worked in that era recalled heated outbursts where Burton yelled at assistants, stormed off set, or slammed props in frustration. Even though these incidents were never officially documented in production reports, they were widely talked about among technicians who witnessed the tension firsthand. The studio, fearing negative press and unwilling to jeopardize the film, largely ignored the behavior as long as Burton delivered strong performances. This atmosphere of silent tolerance only fed the instability, making each shooting day unpredictable. While audiences saw commanding strength in his character, the cast and crew experienced a far more turbulent side, one that shaped the mood of the entire production. Fact 7. The romance subplot that vanished. Early drafts of Where Eagles Dare included a surprisingly large romance arc that would have shifted the film's entire tone. Mary's character originally had deeper emotional involvement with Burton's, including scenes meant to highlight vulnerability and personal stakes amidst all the chaos. But when test audiences reacted poorly to the softer moments, the studio made a swift decision. The romance had to go. Entire sequences were removed before the final cut, leaving behind only brief glances and small interactions that feel oddly disconnected in the finished film. Crew members later mentioned how these unused scenes added emotional weight, but the studio believed audiences wanted pure action, although many of those deleted moments were never processed or archived. Their absence created a noticeable gap in Mary's character development. What survives in the film are scattered hints of a relationship that once existed on the page, but disappeared long before reaching theaters. Fact 8. Eastwood's contract battle behind the scenes. Clint Eastwood entered Where Eagles Dare as a rising star, and he used that momentum to negotiate far more aggressively than expected for an actor not yet at his peak. Industry recollections suggest that he pushed for preferential billing, increased pay, and greater say over how his character was portrayed. While none of this was unusual for Hollywood, the firmness of his demands reportedly surprised producers who were already balancing a chaotic production schedule. Some accounts mention tense meetings where Eastwood held his ground, refusing to compromise on creative points he believed affected his image. The studio eventually agreed to several of his conditions, partly because they feared losing him to competing projects. This behind-the-scenes power struggle added another layer of friction to an already pressured environment. In the end, Eastwood's determination not only shaped his role, but also taught him valuable lessons he would later carry into his directing career. Fact 9. The helicopter sequence that almost went wrong. The thrilling helicopter sequence in Where Eagles Dare wasn't just cinematic excitement. It carried real risks that pushed the cast and crew into dangerous territory. The aircraft used during filming was an actual military-style helicopter, with few adjustments made for safety. According to individuals familiar with productions of that era, mechanical issues reportedly emerged during one of the takes while the helicopter hovered near a cliff edge. Although no official accident was recorded, some recollections suggest that the pilot struggled briefly to maintain stability, creating a moment of silent panic among those watching from the ground. The actors on board reportedly had no idea how close things came to going sideways. Modern productions would never attempt such a scene without extensive safety protocols, but in the 1960s, this raw approach was common. The near miss, whispered about by longtime crew members, adds another layer of danger to a film already known for its extreme stunts. Fact 10. The political backlash no one expected. When Where Eagles Dare hit international markets, it stirred conversations far beyond cinema. The film's portrayal of Nazi officers, though framed within a classic war narrative, sparked criticism in parts of Europe, especially in regions still processing the memories of World War II. According to accounts from the period, some officials argued that the uniforms and characterizations oversimplified a painful history, even within a fictional context. A few countries reportedly considered restrictions, though none were officially enforced. These reactions weren't about the film's intentions, but about timing. The late 1960s saw renewed debates on how wartime stories should be represented on screen. While audiences around the world embraced the movie for its action, others viewed it through a political lens that added unintended weight to its release. This unexpected backlash highlighted how even a high-energy adventure film could become part of a broader cultural conversation. Fact 11. The espionage roots, hidden in plain sight. Many fans of Where Eagles Dare don't realize that parts of the story echo real espionage techniques used during World War II. Alistair MacLean, who wrote the original novel and screenplay draft, had military experience that influenced his approach to covert operations. While the film is fictional, several plot elements resemble real tactics used by intelligence units of the era. Though which ones directly inspired MacLean remains unclear, historians and longtime enthusiasts have often pointed out similarities to known infiltration strategies, while also noting that some parallels may be coincidences or assumptions formed over time. Rumors persist that early viewers familiar with wartime operations felt the film depicted certain procedures with surprising accuracy, even if unintentionally. Whether drawn from direct knowledge or creative intuition, these touches gave the movie an authentic edge. Its blend of imagination and real-world hints helped fuel decades of speculation about what inspired its most intricate missions. Fact 12. The alternate ending that never saw the light. Few viewers know that Where Eagles Dare originally had a different ending, one far darker and more morally complex than the final version. Early drafts reportedly explored a twist that questioned the true motives behind the mission, giving Burton's character a more ambiguous role. While the idea intrigued some members of the creative team, producers worried it would confuse audiences expecting a straightforward adventure. According to accounts from that era, the alternate conclusion was discussed extensively, but ultimately abandoned before full filming. Some claim that brief test footage may have been shot. Though no surviving copies have ever surfaced publicly, the studio preferred a more heroic and decisive finale, something that matched audience expectations of the late 1960s. Even without physical evidence, the existence of this alternate direction continues to fascinate fans, offering a glimpse into a version of the story that could have changed the film's legacy entirely. Fact 13. The uniforms that sparked unexpected tension. In an effort to make Where Eagles Dare feel as authentic as possible, the production used highly accurate reproductions of German uniforms, some reportedly sourced from real military collections. While meant to enhance realism, this choice created unexpected discomfort among locals near the filming locations, many of whom still carried vivid memories of the war years. According to accounts from people familiar with the era, seeing actors dressed in such precise attire brought emotional weight to certain areas of Austria. A few residents reportedly expressed concern or frustration, though nothing escalated into official complaints. Crew members later recalled moments when they had to reassure passers-by that everything was strictly for film purposes. The situation highlighted the delicate balance between historical accuracy and emotional impact. The filmmakers never intended to stir old wounds, but the authenticity of the costumes proved more powerful and more sensitive than anyone anticipated. Fact 14. The snowy locations that pushed everyone to the limit. The breathtaking snowy landscapes in Where Eagles Dare came with a price. Brutal working conditions that tested the endurance of the entire cast and crew. Filming in the Alps meant unpredictable storms, freezing winds, and treacherous terrain that complicated even the simplest shots. Crew members from that era frequently described the location as both stunning and unforgiving, where equipment froze, schedules collapsed, and physical strain became part of the daily routine. Some accounts mention minor injuries caused by slips on ice or sudden weather shifts, which forced rapid changes in plans. Altitude also added another layer of difficulty, leaving certain actors and technicians exhausted after long days in the cold. Despite all the challenges, the harsh environment contributed heavily to the movie's intense, realistic atmosphere. What looked like controlled tension on screen was often the result of genuine exhaustion etched into every frame. Fact 15. The studio fire that nearly halted everything. During production of Where Eagles Dare, a sudden fire at the studio struck without warning, destroying essential sets and throwing the entire schedule into chaos. Accounts from people familiar with that period describe the aftermath as shocking. Charred wood, collapsed structures, and props reduced to ashes. Although the exact cause was never publicly clarified, official reports at the time time labeled it an accident. The loss forced the production team to rebuild major interior sets under intense pressure, working long hours to keep the film from falling further behind. Crew members later recalled how the incident created a mix of frustration and determination as everyone scrambled to recover what was lost. Budget concerns soared, deadlines tightened, and tensions rose, but the team pushed through. Ironically, the rebuilt sets ended up enhancing several sequences, proving that even disasters sometimes leave behind unexpectedly strong results. Fact 16. The feud that split the set in two. While the film presents Richard Burton and Clint Eastwood as a cohesive duo on screen, the atmosphere behind the scenes was far from harmonious. Accounts from people familiar with productions of that era suggest that the two actors had clashing working styles. Burton's intense, unpredictable energy versus Eastwood's calm, disciplined approach. These differences reportedly escalated into quiet resentment that spread through the crew. Some technicians recalled moments when Burton deliberately stretched out takes or delivered lines with less precision during Eastwood's close-ups, forcing additional retakes. Others mentioned Eastwood responding by limiting his interactions and avoiding rehearsals whenever possible. Although none of this became public at the time, the tension subtly shaped the way scenes were filmed, with the director occasionally separating the two to maintain efficiency. Ironically, the friction ended up adding an edge to their on-screen partnership, giving the movie a dynamic intensity rooted partly in real frustration. Fact 17. The injuries the studio tried to downplay. Behind the high-intensity action of Where Eagles Dare, the physical toll on the cast and crew was much heavier than audiences ever realized. People familiar with filmmaking practices of the 1960s often mention that minor injuries were frequent, especially given the demanding stunts and harsh environments. Slips on icy terrain, strained muscles and bruises were common, yet rarely reported publicly. Some accounts suggest that the studio preferred to keep these incidents quiet to avoid negative attention or production delays. Crew members later recalled times when individuals returned to work sooner than recommended, simply to keep the schedule on track. While none of the reported injuries reached catastrophic levels, the cumulative strain created a pressure cooker atmosphere. The final film's intensity owes much to these physically demanding days, moments where exhaustion, grit, and determination blended into the realism that audiences still praise today. Fact 18. The studio's hidden hand in key scenes. Although Brian G. Hutton was the credited director of Where Eagles Dare, people familiar with the production era often mention that studio executives quietly influenced several major decisions behind the scenes. According to these accounts, MGM representatives visited the set frequently, offering notes that sometimes pushed beyond simple suggestions. Some crew members later recalled moments when sequences were reworked or altered after private discussions between producers and executives, occasionally leading to adjustments that surprised even the director. While no official records detail the extent of this involvement, the atmosphere reportedly shifted whenever studio personnel arrived, creating a sense of oversight that wasn't typical for action films of the time. Certain scenes, especially large set pieces, were said to reflect this tug-of-war between artistic vision and commercial caution. The result was a final product shaped not only by the filmmakers, but also by unseen decisions made far from the camera's view. Fact 19. The historical parallels that raised eyebrows. Although Where Eagles Dare is a work of fiction, some elements of its plot bore striking similarities to real wartime operations, enough to spark curiosity among history-minded viewers. According to discussions among military enthusiasts and film historians, the infiltration strategies and misdirection tactics shown in the movie echo certain known Allied methods from World War II. None of these connections were ever officially confirmed, and most researchers agree that similarities may stem from common military practices rather than direct inspiration. Still, the precision with which some procedures were depicted led to speculation that McClane might have drawn loosely from stories circulating among veterans of the era. These parallels added an unexpected layer of realism that audiences didn't anticipate. Whether coincidence or creative intuition, they helped cement the movie's reputation as one of the more tactically convincing adventure films of its time. Fact 20. The Burton-Taylor drama that shook the set. During the filming of Where Eagles Dare, Richard Burton's personal life added another layer of turbulence to an already intense production. People familiar with the era often mention that Burton's relationship with Elizabeth Taylor, one of Hollywood's most public and complex romances, created unexpected distractions on set. According to accounts passed down by crew members, Taylor visited frequently, and her presence reportedly shifted the atmosphere the moment she arrived. Some recollections describe Burton becoming less focused during shooting days when she was around, often stepping away between takes to spend time with her. While none of this appeared in official reports, the dynamic was widely talked about among those working nearby. The interplay between Burton's emotional world and his demanding role contributed to a behind-the-scenes environment that felt unpredictable at times. Even though audiences saw a commanding performance on screen, those present during filming remember moments when personal tension and professional pressure collided dramatically. Behind the icy landscapes and explosive action of Where Eagles Dare lies a world far more chaotic than the film ever reveals. From personal tensions to dangerous stunts and last-minute decisions, the production was its own battlefield. Knowing what happened behind the camera transforms every scene, reminding us that some of cinema's greatest moments are forged through real pressure and unpredictable challenges.